I believe that that's the game. Welcome back everybody. Today we're playing Mono Red Burn. Burn is one of the top meta decks in Pauper at the moment. The Burn archetype has evolved from mere burn spells to now powerful one-drop creatures that have artifact synergies. These one-drops include Reckless Lackey, Goblin Tomb Raider, and Clockwork Percussionist. The deck still plays the most efficient burn spells in Pauper, which include Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, Galvanic Blast, and Fire Blast. The egg is also a perfect source of card advantage whilst being an artifact, and will occasionally produce a threat. Flex slots for the archetype include End the Festivities, Fire Blast, Kessig Flame Breather, Reckless Impulse, and Ren's Resolve. In a metagame where you expect more counterspells, basically Tolarian Terror based decks, the Impulse cards and Kessig Flame Breather are best. In a meta where you expect more mid-range decks, Fire Blast and Kessig Flame Breather are better, and in a meta where you expect more aggressive or creature based decks, End the Festivities is the best card. In today's video, I'll be playing with 2 End the Festivities and 1 Fire Blast. This is to hedge against the other aggressive decks, as well as the mid-range and creature-based decks. End the Festivities currently lines up really well into decks producing Eldrazi Scion tokens, as well as being a trump card against creature decks like Elves and Fairies. I think the current game plan of Burn already lines up pretty well into the blue-based Tolarian Terror decks. Burn's multiple angles of attack using both creatures and burn spells can make it difficult for the opponent's interaction to be efficient and consistent. So despite the dominance of the Tolarian Terror decks in the meta, I don't feel the need to dedicate a mainboard sideboard slot for these matchups. This newer style of burn deck requires more complicated decisions than simply counting how much burn you can deal to your opponent. Utilizing combat damage with Kuldotha Rebirth and Goblin Bushwhacker is now a major win condition for the archetype, but this also creates more complex board states and play patterns. But aggro players never fear complexity. For a quick guide on the most important play patterns in each matchup, I've posted a free sideboard guide with matchup notes on Moxfield. Just click on the link in the description down below. With the deck overview out of the way, let's get into some matches. Match number 1 here on the draw. We do have a 1-lander, but we do have the Clockwork into a Rebirth. So we get 3 looks at our second land. I think I'm going to keep. Opponent just plays a blue-black tap land, so let's go. They're also mulled the 5. We don't draw a land, we draw a Galvanic Blast. So all good, we'll just lead off with the Clockwork and punch for 1 here. Opponent leads off with the Fairy Seer, scrying 2. They don't have their second land. Okay, so it's going to be a very interesting one. We do hit our second land though. Going to cast the Rebirth first of all, sacking the Clockwork. We hit a Galvanic Blast with the Clockwork trigger. So we're just going to cast the Galvanic on the Fairy and say go. We're in a really good position here, especially if they miss their second land drop again. They do hit their second land, and they just pass the turn. We hit our third land for the draw. So I think here we're just going to attack for 3 first of all. And we're just going to play land and pass. Don't need to fire off the Chain Lightning yet. We have a lot of time to be able to cast this on following turns. Opponent just casts down a Goblin token, and they don't have a third land, so they just pass. I still think I'm just going to not do anything here. We can just keep applying additional damage with the Goblin tokens. We draw a follow-up Chain Lightning for the turn. So here I'm definitely going to cast at least one of these Chain Lightnings post-combat. Attack for 2. Opponent doesn't kill a Goblin. Going to fire off 1 Chain Lightning. And opponent flashes in the Spellstutter Sprite. So we'll kill this Spellstutter Sprite in response with a Galvanic Blast. Don't think we're going to get to 3 artifacts this game. So yep, opponent takes 3 off the Chain Lightning. And I'll also cast a second Chain Lightning just whilst the opponent's tapped out. So opponent's down to 8. It's going to be super tough for them to get out of this position. Opponent plays a Seat of the Synod for their turn and a Refurbished Familiar. Discard Galvanic Blast here. We're going to cast the End of Festivities to kill the Familiar plus deal them damage. We top deck a Great Furnace, so we don't kill them this turn, but things are looking really good. And now they're on 2 and it's looking really grim for them. Yep, Blood Fountain resolves. Opponent casts a Deadly Dispute into a Nihil Spellbomb, into another Refurbished Familiar. So playing out that land was pretty nice. We draw Mountains. We don't kill our opponent this turn, but we do put them to 1 here. I think honestly the opponent playing this long is going to be really bad for them because now we have perfect information on their deck for sideboarding. I probably wouldn't have bought it into Artifact Destruction, but they're clearly an Artifact deck now. But if they conceded after the turn they kind of played the Fairy, we probably would have assumed they were just on Dimir Fairies, so possibly a bit of a mistake from the opponent. Yep, they cracked the Nile Spellbomb, exiled my graveyard, and we top deck Lethal Percussionist. And yeah, opponent scoops it up. We'll move to sideboarding. Pretty easy. I'm going to be boarding in the other 2 copies of End the Festivities and the 2 Gorilla Shamans as well as the 3 Cast into Fire. We're going to be boarding out the playset of Chain Lightning, 1 Fire Blast, and 2 Reckless Lackeys. Game 2, opponents on the play once again. Easy mulligan decision here. We got no lands. We're going to have to ship this one back. This second hand looks very nice. We'll keep this. And I think we're going to bottom the Bushwhacker here. Really want to be able to keep this Epicure to create the artifact for the rebirth, because I don't think at this rate we're going to be sacrificing the Great Furnace. Also, being able to turn to Gorilla Shaman, one of their lands, hopefully will be fantastic. Opponent just plays tap land. We draw a Goblin Tomb Raider for the turn. Here I'm going to lead off with the Great Furnace into the Tomb Raider. We might get punished with artifact destruction, but we still have a mountain here, so we should be okay. Opponent plays a second tap land and just passes. Oh, we draw the egg. The egg is very good here. I think we just get to kick things off with attacking for 2. Opponent does nothing. We'll go mountain into Epicure, and we'll cast a rebirth on the blood token here. Opponent just goes Ica Wellspring on their turn 3. Really good for us. And looks like they've missed their third land. We untap, we draw a mountain. Mountain's really good here as well. We'll kick things off with the egg. The egg reveals an end of festivities. We will cast that. It's just free to cast. Opponent casts another Ica Wellspring. This is looking really bad for them. And yeah, they just play a tap land and pass. So it's going to be the game here for us. Galvanic Blast you.
Galvanic Blast you!
And yeah, opponent just scoops it up. Uneventful game 2, but kind of showcases what happens if you just play tap lands and spells that don't impact the board against Mono Red Burn. We'll move on to the next match. Match number 2 here on the play. Our opening hand's very similar to match 1 opening hand, so we're going to keep. I think the combo of Clockwork plus Rebirth is good enough if you have the 1 land. Opponent mulls to 6. Kick things off with the Clockwork. Attack for 1. Ooh, opponent plays Evolving Wilds.
That's wild.
This could be a few things. Draw a second egg. First attack for 1. And I think playing the Rebirth here is slightly better than playing an egg. If we miss on the second land drop with the egg, at least we'll have a decent board position on the following turn. That's not a land, so we're just going to have to pass the turn here. Opponent grabs a mountain with their Evolving Wilds. So this could be the Gruul Ramp deck. Opponent plays an island, so an Is It sort of Delver deck. Ooh, well, Blue-Red Burn, so they got a Thermo Alchemist. Very interesting. Pretty interesting that they play the Thermo Alchemist into our Lightning Bolt. Top deck a second land, that's really, really good. So yeah, we're just going to lead things off with the bolts on the Alchemist. Opponent's possibly made a mistake there, thinking that the Percussionist is only to the end of the 1 turn, but it is a really good card. It's till the end of the following turn. Then we'll play a Reckless Lackey, I think. Just get some more board presence going. Ooh, opponent miracles a Thunderous Wrath. Okay, so we're going to take 5. Opponent trying to figure out how to tap red mana. Opponent just scoops up the match. That's really surprising. That's only happened to me a handful of times playing Magic Online. Someone concedes the match in game 1. I assume they've just tilted off the face of the planet because they've misclicked on the miracle trigger. Hey, we'll take those. Let's move on to match 3. Heading into match number 3 now, we're on the draw. Opening hand is very clean, so we're going to keep it. Opponent also keeps their 7. And they kick things off with a Wild Growth on a basic forest. Was hoping for them to play a creature mana dork there so we could bolt it, but no such luck. We top deck a bolt for our turn. We're just going to play a vampire here. Ooh, opponent plays Malevolent Rumble, revealing an elf, another Wild Growth, an Eldrazi, and another Arbor Elf. Possibly they were looking for a second land here, so we could see them just pass the turn. Wow, if they do just pass the turn here, we're in a really good position, especially if we are able to draw a third land. So they do take the Eldrazi with their Rumble, and they do just pass. They were looking for that second land with the Rumble, and we do top deck the third land. Okay, so we're going to have a pretty nice sequence here. We're just going to first attack for 1 with the Vampire. A lot of 1-landers in this league so far. Just going to play the second Vampire, and we'll play a Rebirth, sacking one of the blood tokens. Hopefully they miss on their land again. Yep, looks like opponent's playing their Eldrazi, creating another spawn and a 3-3. And yeah, it does look like they missed their land once again, so we're going to have a really clean turn here. I think here it's better to save our burn spells for their face, so we're just going to Kicker the Bushwhacker and let them block one of our 2/1s. This amount of damage with the opponent so far behind on the board should be enough for the game. Yep, they take 10. Weather the Storm would be pretty wild, but it would just win them the game. Wait, is Weather the Storm banned? Hang on.
Bruh.
No, Weather Storm's not banned. Sorry folks, always just gotta double check which Pauper Storm cards are banned, because it seems to change every month. They play a Jewel Thief, and they just play an Elf, so this is gonna be the game. We got enough burn to kill them. Galvanic Blast you!
Galvanic Blast you!
Oh, they didn't let me play my second Galvanic Blast. For sideboarding here, I'm just gonna be boarding in the other 2 copies of End the Festivities and the 2 Electricary, and we're gonna be boarding out the 4 Goblin Tomb Raider, just because the Goblin Tomb Raider line up really poorly into their 3-drops. Game 2, we're on the draw once again. Opening hand looks pretty nice. We've got a 1-drop creature and a way to kill their mana dork, so we got to keep this one. Opponent does not have a Wild Growth or an Elf on turn 1. Ooh, we draw a Kuldotha Rebirth. That is really nice. I think though I'm just going to kick things off with a mountain. I don't think I want to cast a turn 1 Rebirth. Just don't want to set ourselves back on mana that way. Turn 2 Rumble. They reveal another Rumble, a Chrysalis, a Jewel Thief, and an Arbor Elf. Be interesting to see which creature they take here. If they take a Jewel Thief, it's likely to indicate indicate they don't have another land in their hand. They did take the Chrysalis, so it seems like they do have the land to play that next turn. Ooh, we top deck a Clockwork Percussionist. That's quite nice. I think here we're unfortunately inclined to cast this End the Festivities. We might possibly get to a stage where we Fire Blast the Chrysalis. Unfortunately, this Chain Lightning isn't a Lightning Bolt, so we don't have complete control over when we want to kill the Chrysalis. Attack for 1 with the Vampire. I think the key here is going to be stalling when they can cast a Chrysalis. So I'm going to slam off this End of Festivities just now. Not heaps of value here, but keeping the Chrysalis off the board for an extra turn I think is super important now. We'll just cast the Rebirth, sacking the Blood, and say go. So yeah, now if they play a 3-drop, we can kill it. If they don't play a 3-drop, it's really good. Looks like they have nothing, so it's really good for us. We top deck another Vampire, which is really nice. So we'll just cast out the Clockwork, move to combat, hit them for 5 here. Play out our land, play the second Vampire, and just pass. We're going to hold this Chain Lightning just in case they have a 3-drop on a following turn. Wow, so they play a Mountain but don't cast their Chrysalis. That's really interesting. Top deck a Rebirth. So here I think I'm just going to attack. This could indicate something like a Weather the Storm. Oh, they have a Breath Weapon. Okay, that's really good against us. We trigger the Clockwork. We hit another Clockwork. So we have 7 damage in our hand with burn spells. We have to decide which artifact we're going to sack for the Rebirth. And I think I'm leaning towards the Great Furnace. I think sacking the Great Furnace here is slightly better. Because yeah, I think if we can just avoid drawing a Mountain, we can just win the game with burn. And if we draw a Mountain on our following turn, we really do want the blood to be able to filter it out. So yeah, I think I'm going to go with that line. Play out the Clockwork. I think I am as well. Just going to Chain Lightning them now, just in case they have something like a Weather the Storm. Yep, opponent casts Utopia Sprawl. Yep, they play out the Eldrazi. They sack 1 Scion, so they might cast a Rumble here. Ooh, they cast a Weather the Storm. Weather the Storm looks really good here. I think now I'm getting punished for my Great Furnace play. Electrickery. Crack the Blood here. I think I'm going to have to end up Fire Blasting Chrysalis. I think this is our best method of winning. Yep, so we're going to let the opponent sacrifice their Scion so we can kill the Chrysalis here. So yep, now we have 5 1-power creatures and no lands. Repurposer is still pretty bad for us. Not great. Let's just attack with the Percussionist. See if they want to block. They do. Let's hit a land, please. Ooh, Rebirth. That is not a land. We got major punished here for sacrificing the Great Furnace to the Kuldotha Rebirth. Opponent attacks with both their creatures. We're just going to not block here. Oh, opponent top decks a second beast. And yeah, we don't draw a land, so we have to scoop it up here. Game 3, we're on the play. Hand looks really nice here. Let's keep it. Kick things off with a Percussionist. Opponent leads off with a Wild Growth. We draw a Lackey for the turn. So I'm just going to play out the Lackey and play the Percussionist. I think I'm just going to hold the Bushwhacker and the Rebirth to combo on the 1 turn. Opponent plays a Forest into a Utopia Sprawl. They did choose red with their Utopia Sprawl. So here we're just going to attack for 3. Opponent takes it, and we're just going to pass. Okay, interesting. So if the opponent did have the board wipe, they've elected to not cast it. I think we have played in a way that's really awkward for them to cast the board wipe. Opponent plays a Jewel Thief. They still are representing the board wipe. Possibly was correct to sacrifice the Lackey in their end step. I think here I'm going to cast the End of Festivities. This way we can threaten to first strike damage, kill their Jewel Thief if they block the Lackey. And if they decide to block a Percussionist, then we get extra looks at cards. But I think the key here is to get their life total to about 8 or 6, so we can try and just push through the damage with the Bushwhacker and Rebirth combo. So yeah, they are going to block the Lackey here, so I am going to fire off the Electrickery. Yep, they're going to fire off the weapon. Play might not have been great. This is really bad into a Chrysalis. We hit a land and a Lackey off of the Percussionist triggers, and we'll just cast a Lackey and pass. Opponent has a Rumble. They reveal another Rumble. Okay, so they have a Repurposer. It's not that bad for us. And an Arbor Elf. Okay, so if we can draw and end the Festivities here, this would be really good. Top deck a Lightning Bolt. So opponent's last card in hand is a Hydra. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to firstly bolt the Repurposer. Going to cast out this Rebirth, sacking a Furnace, and then I'm going to kick at the Bushwhacker, and we're going to attack for 10. And this way the opponent can't kill the Lackey in combat, so next turn we can still activate it. So yep, they're going to block some creatures here. Opponent top decks a Forest. They'll play the Forest, and now they're going to play out the Hydra for maximum mana. But we do have some great top decks here. If we just top deck Burn Spell, we do just win. Yep, so they play the Hydra for 5, and they attack for 5. That is very egregious. We'll attack for 4 here. Oh, that's how it works. They just sack the spawn. Okay, fair enough. Still, I think this attack is still correct. We will sack the lackey here, because if this treasure that we make, we're still able to cast the Epicure. We draw a mountain. We're going to keep the mountain in our hand to use as fodder for the blood token. Well played by the opponent there. Looks like opponent's not casting anything. We draw another Epicure. So unless they top deck a Weather the Storm, I think we've got the game. Let's attack with all our stuff. They block an Epicure. Got to crack a blood first of all. See if we top deck an instant speed and removal spell. We top deck a lightning bolt. So that should be it, folks. Even if they have the Weather the Storm, we can bolt them in response. And we get there. Wow, that was a really nice one. But yeah, let's move on to match number 4. Don't forget to check out the free sideboard and matchup guide I've posted onto Moxfield. Just click on the link in the description. If you would sideboard differently in a matchup, leave a comment down below. Heading into match number 4, we're on the draw. Our opening hand looks pretty nice though. We're just missing like a 1-drop creature, but looks like it's pretty nice. We're going to be able to just end the festivities, this Delver of Secrets anyway. We draw a mountain for the turn. Yeah, we're just going to fire off the festivities. The second Delver. We draw another mountain. Not ideal. I was going to start off with an egg, try and hit a burn spell or something. We did Chain Lightning, cool. So we're probably going to cast the Chain Lightning in our hand anyway, but it's nice to get it off the egg. Opponent ponders. Opponent doesn't shuffle with the ponder and they play a third Delver. Top deck a bolt. We might lose some value if we hit a land off the egg. I think it's well worth it to play a land and play around the Spell Pierce. We hit the land off the egg. Kicker the Bushwhacker. Get the little combo going. Attack for 8. Opponent hits a Brainstorm off the Delver. Okay, probably best card. They decide to cast the Brainstorm here as well. Opponent plays out the 4th island, and they don't attack with their Delver. We top deck a Galvanic Blast. First of all, fire that off on the Delver, and they Brainstorm in response. Very interesting. They're likely looking for either a counterspell, or to get the counterspell they put back on top of their deck. Delver dies. Looks like they don't have the counterspell. Attack for 4 here. I think I am going to keep this land in hand, just in case if we top deck a Voldaren Epicure, we can filter it away with the blood token. In the end step, opponent's going to Thought Scour themselves, milling a Cryptic Serpent and an island. Well, I wonder what their hand is. Their hand must be quite bad. They got an island cycle here. They play the island. They have a serpent that they cast. Top deck a Rebirth. The Rebirth here is not great. We'll start off by going to combat and attacking with all our guys. I think here I'm going to fire off both the burn spells. Opponent is really unlikely to have 2 counter spells for these. So it looks like they've got the first counter spell now. So here I'm going to play the land and I'm going to lightning bolt them now so that they can't counter spell this, but they can still spell pierce, but we've got the 2 mana up. They top deck a Brainstorm though, and they have a Terror and another Serpent. But we top deck an Epicure, makes it pretty nice and easy. Awesome, we'll move on to sideboarding. For sideboarding here, it's pretty easy. We'll just be boarding in the 2 relics and the 3 Pyroblasts. Relics to stop against the Serpents, and then the Pyroblast because it hits all their cards in their deck. We're going to be boarding out the 2 End the Festivities and 2 Clockworks and a Fireblast. Clockwork is really awkward because they don't really have creatures to trade in combat, and End the Festivities isn't great because the only target is the Delver. Game number 2, we're on the draw again. This hand's quite nice, we're going to keep it. They just lead off with an Island and Sego. So now is a really tough one. Do I lead off with an Epicure or do I lead off with a Percussionist? I think I want to lead off with a Percussionist here. I think it's better to sacrifice that for the Rebirth next turn. Wow, opponent Blue Elemental Blast it. That's pretty interesting. It's also probably better for us that they Blue Elemental Blast the Percussionist and not the Epicure. Ooh, we top deck a Tomb Raider. That's really nice. Casting the Epicure. I think it's more important that we land the artifact here. I think it's more unlikely that they fire off the counterspell on the first spell we cast. We'll now cast the Tomb Raider, and if they counterspell this, that's a lot better for us than them counterspelling the Epicure. They Brainstorm in response. Wow, they have another Blue Blast. And yeah, opponent Hydro Blast the Tomb Raider. Yep, opponent casts a Thought Scour on their upkeep, milling a Spell Pierce and an Annul. And opponent slams 2 Terrors, which is really good. It's going to be a bit tough to get through this game. Top deck another Bolt. So let's just fire off the Rebirth and Sego. Opponent attacks with both of their Terrors here. I think we're going to not block. They have a Serpent. We're going to fire off a Bolt on the end step here at them. Ooh, we draw a Great Furnace. Okay. Wow, we're just like a turn behind. I think if we were on the play this game, we likely would have won. Here, I think we're just going to fire off one of the Bushwhackers. Oh, looks like they have a counterspell anyway. We're just going to pass here. So now we're unfortunately forced to chump block, and I think that just spells out death for us. Unfortunately, the opponent isn't on a low enough life total yet. Opponent was able to land the Terrors a bit too fast for us, and I mean, looks like they just top deck a counterspell anyway. So yeah, we'll move on to game 3. Heading into game 3, we're going to make a quick change. We're going to board back in the Fire Blast and board out one of the eggs, just because the opponent showed us that they did sideboard in Annuls. Game 3, we're on the play. Our hand looks quite nice. We're going to keep it. Kick things off with a Vampire. I think here we're going to play an egg first. Really try and force them to cast a Blue Blast. Act like we don't have a second land. Oh man, they thought about it. Damn, really unfortunate they didn't go for it. We do have the Goblin Tomb Raider though, so they're going to be using it on this anyway. Yep, attack for 1 here. Opponent just plays an island and passes. Ooh, we top deck a Goblin Bushwhacker. That is fantastic here. Attack for 1 with the Vampire. Play out a second Vampire. Really try and bait them to use their interaction. They're not going for it. Cast a second Vampire here. Really just don't want my Rebirth to be hit by a counterspell or a blue blast, even though we can sack the egg. Opponent brainstorms in the end step and brainstorms again, which is pretty bad. Brainstorm into brainstorm without shuffling your library is not a great play. Possibly indicates that they're digging for a third land, which would be really interesting. Yeah, they hit the lower end revealed, so they island cycle in their upkeep. We've set up a way that we can both Rebirth and Bushwhacker on a turn. Attack for 3 with the vampires first. And I'm just going to hold up these burn spells to cast in the opponent's end step. Really want to try and time walk them this turn. Yep, opponent brainstorms again, and they have a mental note. So it looks like we're going to be seeing some serpents or some terrors here, and they have a 4th land as well. So yeah, they have double terror, fair enough. They've brainstormed 3 times, so you know, they're likely to have a lot of good cards in their hand still. In their end step, I am going to be firing off the Galvanic Blast and the Bolt. Really try and get this counterspell out of their hand. Going to bolt them as well here. That resolves as well. We top deck another Bolt, which is super interesting. So yeah, here I'm going to fire off the Rebirth, sacking the egg now. I really like how I play the Rebirth here though. It's a really awkward spot for them to cast something. Egg trigger resolves, I hit a second egg. So yeah, they are going to blue blast this Rebirth. Going to cast this egg out, hopefully hit a land. Hit a Chain Lightning, just going to have to pass. Opponent ponders. Opponent does not shuffle with the ponder. 4th copy of Brainstorm. They play Island, and they're attacking with both of their terrors here. We're not going to block. Looks like they have either terrors to follow up with. Yep, they have a serpent to follow up. Wow, okay, so if we top deck a land here, I believe that's the game. Oh, we top deck a Pyroblast. I believe that's the game as well. So we're going to target their serpent, and they're forced to counterspell this, otherwise they die. Oh no, they're not forced to counterspell this. However, very close if they don't. Looks like they're going to go for it. So we're going to lightning bolt them now, and that should be the match. Damn, that was a really close game. Super interesting. Opponent cast 4 brainstorms. I think they're probably was some spots where I could have timed some things a little bit better, but I think overall I played that game really well, and I put the Rebirth in a really awkward spot for them to counterspell. Possibly their attack last turn was slightly too egregious, but yeah, I think overall I played that game nicely, and we're going to be moving on to the trophy match. Alright everybody, we're here for the trophy match. First trophy match of the channel. Our opening hand is really quite nice here. We got double Rebirth, so we're definitely going to keep. I think the question is whether or not we fire off one of these Rebirths on turn 1. I don't think I am going to do that. I think the much safer route here is to just turn 1 Vampire, and next turn I can cast 2 Rebirth. Apparently it's off with the Utopia Sprawl. We draw another Rebirth for our turn. So yeah, here we're just going to turbo out both of our Rebirths, sacking all the artifacts on our battlefield, and we're just going to hope that this can get there over the next 2 or 3 turns. Looks like we might be up against another Gruul ramp deck. Ooh, opponent here casts the Malevolent Rumble. Looks like we're running into a lot of opponents who like to keep one-landers. They grab a forest off of their Rumble and cast an elf. Bolt here is very nice. I think though we'll just start by firing off the egg. If we do hit something like a Chain Lightning, I want to hit the elf, but we do hit a land. Yeah, I think I'm just going to bolt the elf and attack with all of our creatures. I think saving the bolt for their face is going to be slightly less damage than trying to push through with these creatures, because if we attack with everything, the opponent's definitely going to block an elf on a goblin. Maybe it is better to save this bolt though. I think I am going to save this lightning bolt. I think if the opponent plays something like a Chrysalis next turn, we could be in trouble if we don't have a burn spell for it. And I think I'm more happy to trade an elf with one of the 1/1s and keep the bolt in my hand. I think too I'm not going to cast this Rebirth just yet. I think this extra card off the egg is going to be more important, so I don't want to sacrifice that now. And yep, opponent goes for the Chrysalis. This is really good for us. They've also got access to no more colored mana, and opponent just scoops it up before I can cast anything on my turn. Very, very good. We'll head on to sideboarding. Sideboarding here is the same as the previous Gruul ramp match. We're going to be sideboarding out the 4 Goblin Tomb Raiders because they line up really poorly into the opponent's 3 and 4 drops, and then we're going to be boarding in the other 2 copies of End the Festivities and the 2 Electricaries to try and ping off some of the mana dorks and hit the Eldrazi spawn tokens. Alrighty, game number 2. We're of course on the draw here. Our opening hand looks really good once again. We're getting pretty lucky with these opening hands. Ooh, looks like the opponent's mulled the 5. They do have the Utopia Sprawl though, so we can't bolt the bird, but we still have a nice play casting our Vampire on turn 1 again, I think.
12 seconds later.
Looks like the opponent's gotten up from their seat to get a beverage. Opponent leads off with a forest into an Arbor Elf, so we're definitely going to have to kill this elf. The real question is, do we cast the End of Festivities or the Galvanic Blast? Instinctively, I really just want to fire off with the End of Festivities, but if the opponent hits land Chrysalis, End of Festivities is not very good anyway, and we've got a Great Furnace and an egg, so we do have time to hit another artifact to try and get to Metalcraft for the Galvanic Manic Blast later. So I think I am just going to fire off the End the Festivities. Oh, I guess I didn't think about playing around the board wipe, so possibly would have been better to just play the Reckless Lackey. But opponent has 2 cards in hand. If one of them's a land and one of them's the board wipe, they're in a bit of trouble. Yeah, I think I'm going to play the Lackey here actually. Definitely a mistake. We missed out on the 1 damage, but I do have a feeling that the opponent's holding either a Chrysalis or the board wipe, and I want to deploy this Rebirth after the board wipe. Plus, this play lines up really well into Chrysalis because we're keeping this blood token around to get Metalcraft. So yeah, I was probably a bit too hasty in going to combat there, but at the same time, I think I've made the correct play. Oh, looks like they just go land pass. Mountain off the top, not what we really want. Let's start things off with the egg. Oh, looks like they just F6. So we hit a Chain Lightning off of the egg, so we're definitely going to be casting that one. Chain Lightning them, and I think we're still not going to cast this Rebirth just yet. There was actually a good spot to probably play Great Furnace. That was actually probably a slight mistake, but it's not the end of the world. Okay, so opponent Weather the Storms. Hopefully now they don't have land into a 5-drop or have some decent threats. Really hope they were just kind of banking on that Weather the Storm to carry them a bit. Let's play a Wild Growth. So yep, we're just going to untap. Chain Lightning's a nice one. I think I'm going to crack the egg. They've only got 1 card in hand, so if it is the board wipe or another Weather the Storm, I think we can still beat that. Tack in. We're going to cast this Lightning Bolt. If they have the Weather the Storm, it doesn't really matter. It just negates the bolt, so cool, they don't have the Weather the Storm. Really nice. They also probably don't have the board wipe, so there it is. There it is.
Galvanic Blast you.
The first trophy of the channel. I think my play patterns this game were quite nice. I think my thought processes were good, except the execution was a little bit off, especially with like playing the Reckless Lackey post-combat. We definitely got lucky this league, but look, overall, I think it took a little bit of luck and we played pretty well overall, and yeah, we got the 5-0. Thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit subscribe. Also, don't forget to check out the free sideboard guide via the Moxfield link down below. If there's a particular deck you'd like me to play next, leave a comment down below as well. As always, best of luck for your upcoming tournaments.